Okay, if I'm being completely honest here, let's be real. Darren Till would beat Carl Froch. He would. Carl Froch is 48 years old. Look, there's a lot of talk about this going on right now. Obviously, Darren Till going mental at Carl Froch after the fight, going at him. Carl Froch is just sat there eating his apple, not phased by him at all. But yeah, look, I don't want to see Carl Froch fight again. I really like Carl Froch. I think he's a great fighter, great boxer, great fighter. You know, look at what he's done. Look at the achievements he's had. Look at his resume. Um, I feel like it would be a shame to see him come back. It would be a real shame to see him come back. And I don't think a 48-year-old man beats a 33-year-old man. And look, you can say what you like about Darren Till's boxing ability. The reality is that the guy can box. He can. He's got good ability. He's got a good lead hand. He's a southpaw. He's tricky. He's got power. He's quick. You know, he's no world class or ranked boxer by any means whatsoever. He's not. But he doesn't need to beat a 48-year-old man. And I feel like you're stupid to say Carl Froch would win the fight. Look at past history. Look at past history. Look at what happened with Mike Tyson. Look at what happened with Holyfield. You know, they're two things to say. I still also look at David Hay versus Joe Fournier and think like David Hay didn't really, fully have it in that fight. You know, obviously he won that fight, but it's like he wasn't as quick, he wasn't as agile in there whatsoever. You know, you lose it over time as you're old, and Carl Froch hasn't fought in 11 years. He hasn't fought in 11 years, don't forget. You know, he said himself, he hasn't sparred. He hasn't been sparring in bloody ages. You know, he does his cardio, he's on the bag, but that's completely different to sparring. And at 48 years old, your punch resistance is not going to be there. And I reckon Carl Froch has about a round and a half in him at this point. You know, I feel like people would, want to bring up the most recent example with Manny Pacquiao coming back at 46. And look, fair enough, but Manny Pacquiao's a different breed to a lot of these guys. Manny Pacquiao's just one in a million out of these 46-year-olds. You know, he's one in a million. Plus, he was only out for like 3.5 years, had an exhibition fight, which is keeping active. No matter what you say, it is a fight and it has kept you active. Carl Froch hasn't had any of that in the 11 years that he's been retired, rightfully retired. There's no point in him coming back. There's no point. I mean, he's doing well with his YouTube channel. He's doing well with his punditry. He doesn't need to come back. He doesn't need to come back. Look at what he's done. Look at what he's proved in his career. You know, I feel like his fight against George Groves in front of 80,000 people at Wembley was the perfect way for him to end his career. He can't stop banging on about it. It was the perfect way for him to end his career. You know, he can't stop banging on about beating George Groves in front of 80,000 people. Imagine if he goes on and loses to Darren Till, who isn't even, classed as an actual boxer. He's an MMA fighter at the end of the day. So it would be a real shame to see Carl Froch lose to Darren Till, and he would, because Darren Till can box. He's got good power. And he can set up his shots while he's got good fluidity in his shots, and that's what you need to beat a 48-year-old. That's what you need to beat a 48-year-old. 11 years out the game. I don't see how people can tell me that Carl Froch wins. You can't tell me 11 years out the game, Carl Froch can come back and beat Darren Till, who's 33, sparring regularly. This guy is taking elbows. He's taking taking kicks to the face. All recent stuff. He's been it with it all, Darren Till. He's not losing to a 48-year-old Carl Froch. Carl Froch would batter this version of Darren Till in the very first round in his prime. Obviously, it's not even a conversation. But I feel like it's something you need to bring up because people are just, I feel like we all know what would happen. But right now, I just feel like this doesn't do anyone any favors, and Darren Till's basically pulling a Jake Paul if he takes this. He's all basically pulling a Jake Paul by even talking about this fight happening. You know, it's just a fight which shouldn't be allowed to happen, but Misfits will want it to happen, DAZN will want it to happen. There's an actual beef between these two. I really don't know why, but just 'cause things have been, Carl Froch said something about Till's ability or something like that. But Till's got a good ability overall. I mean, nowhere near what Prime Carl Froch would have. But right now, he's got better ability than Carl Froch. He's going to be way quicker than him. He's going to be more powerful than him. You know, look at past history. 9.5 times out of 10. So that's basically, or 9.9 times out of 10. Excluding Manny Pacquiao from all of this, you can't come back you can't come back over 45 years old and win a boxing fight against someone who knows how to fight. You can't. You can't. It's not like Darren Till's an average Joe off the street who we're just bringing in. No, he's someone who has boxing ability, you know, doing the training. He's a martial artist, years and years in combat sports. You know, it's not a crime to say this whatsoever. He can definitely he can definitely, and he probably definitely will win, in my opinion. I'm so convinced Darren Till would win at this point in his career. And if you use your brain, think about this logically. Age matters so much. It does. You know, in sports, but in combat sports especially, age matters so much. Look, if we look at another sport, for example, no one's going to say, so Roger Federer comes back out of retirement, goes on. He, at this moment in time, he would probably go on and lose to, the lowest possible seeded tennis player right now, you know, because their reflexes are going to be good, their speed, their timing is going to be good. Roger Federer's going to be having injuries. He's not got it anymore, and that's tennis. That is a lot different to a combat sport where your health is everything. And Carl Froch has been in many wars in his career, and it's all going to have taken a toll. In these 11 years he's been off, the brain, it would have all taken a toll. Carl Froch will not beat Darren Till.